One of the most common frustrations I see with new telescope owners has nothing to do with the optics, but everything to do with pointing the telescope. And pointing at something by aiming down the tube of your telescope is much harder than it sounds. Most telescopes come with only one finder scope, and especially for beginners, I find that to be completely inadequate. Trying to aim a telescope with a single finder is only getting you half of the way there, and adding a second reference changes the experience altogether. This is the finder scope that came with one of my telescopes. This is basically a small refractor telescope that has a crosshairs inside that gives you a relatively wide angle view so that you can locate objects in the sky more easily. Many telescopes only come with one of these, and what they don't help you do is actually rough point your telescope anywhere in the sky. Furthermore, the straight through nature of them often requires you to strain your neck and look through it at weird angles and makes it very uncomfortable and disorienting. Straight through finders change the orientation of what you're looking at. If you were to look at an object across the straight through this during the daytime, you would notice that the image is flipped around 180 degrees, and so what you're seeing through it is going to be flipped left to right and top to bottom. This can be very disorienting when you're looking at the night sky because up in space you're losing all of your reference. Especially for beginners, these straight through finders can be very difficult to use. And because they are simply a small telescope, they do nothing to help you initially point where you're looking at. Where these optical finders can really help is trying to dial in on an object. M13, the globular cluster in Hercules. This is not a naked eye object, but in even a modest optical finder scope like this one, it will pop out quite bright. A lot of times people will try and use a fixed point on their telescope to try and aim at an object in the sky. While it sounds like it works pretty well, it's usually challenging. That's why I'd recommend getting something like this, which is colloquially known as a red dot finder. This red dot finder here works by projecting a small, faint dot onto this glass, and when you look at the sky with it, it appears as if it's projecting it out into the sky. If you line this up with the line of sight on your telescope, it gives you a very effective pointer. One of the points I'm trying to make in this video, though, is that using a combination of optical and red dot finders reduces the overall cognitive load you need when using your telescope. The red dot finders are really valuable and really good at helping you point in the general direction of an object. And then you can follow up with your finder scope, your optical finder, to dial in on an object exactly. This is a Telrad, and it's an industry standard simply because of how easy it is to use. What it does is project a series of concentric circles onto this glass and has variable brightness control. I'd also like to talk for a moment about right angle finder scopes. What's nice about these is they have a integrated diagonal here. It makes it much easier to use. They also have a prism inside here that makes the orientation correct. You'll see them referred to as RACI, right angle correct image. And so not only do you get comfortability from them, but the image that you see in the eyepiece matches how you see it in the sky. These are a really valuable upgrade, and I use one every time that I use a telescope. Following this two finder method can really enhance your star hopping and object location capabilities. If I have a manual telescope where I'm going to be locating objects myself, I will always have a red dot and a optical finder mounted on them. These are the exact finders that I use on my 6-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain grab and go setup. If I want to go out and take a quick look at Jupiter, I can get in the general direction with the red dot and dial in with the optical finder. On my computerized or GoTo telescopes, I always have a red dot finder mounted on them. They are simply invaluable during the alignment process in identifying and pointing out bright stars so that I can get my GoTo system set up and running quickly. If it feels like you're fighting your finder scope, it doesn't mean that you're bad at this. I've been doing this for years, and I still find straight through finders to be disorienting and challenging to use. Following that two finder setup that I described here will really help reduce the friction in your setup. So if you're a beginner who's struggling with pointing your telescope and locating objects, I would encourage you to look at your finder scopes and how you're using them. Whether your telescope came with an optical finder or a red dot, it might be helpful for you to get both of them and make sure that you're running both at the same time. Even as someone who's experienced experience using a telescope, it dramatically decreases the amount of time that it takes me to locate objects in the sky and get my telescope trained in. Alternatively, a good workaround to not having an optical finder is having a very long focal length eyepiece, meaning that eyepiece is very low magnification. And while it won't give you the absolute wide field view of, say, the 6 times or 9 times that the finders that I displayed on screen were, you can certainly get some benefit from taking that approach. If you find this kind of experience-based explanation helpful, I'd encourage you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. This is Trevor from Night Sky Voyager. Thanks for tuning in.